Now then, this I got from America, loose but with a stand. This, of course, is a classic Star Trek, the original series, Romulan Bird of Prey. Not a warbird, but apparently some sources do term it a warbird, but I believe it's a bird of prey. So before the Klingon Bird of Prey was ever a thing, we had this, which was a similarly motifed alien adversary ship for the Enterprise. It appeared, I believe, first in the episode The Balance of Terror. The Romulans brought it into service. Now, apparently it was sort of mid to late 2260s. I was thinking that didn't make sense, but then I remembered that the Enterprise was launched before Kirk took it on. So actually that probably does pan out. And it's got a rather extraordinary history in the sort of the universe of Star Trek, in that it's appeared in more series of Star Trek than you might imagine given its age. Because yes, it appears in the original series, yes, it appears of course in the remastered original series, but it also appeared in Lower Decks, and it also bizarrely appeared in Star Trek Picard in a sort of slightly revamped form, but it nevertheless was identified as a Romulan Bird of Prey at the time, and it then appeared in Strange New Worlds, which of course is actually pre the original series, but again it was the classic Romulan Bird of Prey. We do see another style of this ship as well in Star Trek Enterprise, but that was a precursor to this Bird of Prey, and it was very stylistically different, and it was green in colour, it wasn't this grey colour. Now, in The Balance of Terror, this was said to not be a warp-capable ship, as if it had been sort of dropped off to do what it was doing in Balance of Terror, but apparently that was a sort of a prototype version with a very heavy plasma torpedo loadout, and that's why it was sub-warp, so it was impulse powered only. But these nacelles here, which per Roddenberry's directive can see each other, indicate that in fact it was, in its main production life, a warp-capable ship. And the other thing that really made it stand out at that point in time, of course, was that it was a cloaked vessel. So in Balance of Terror, what we basically get is a game of cat and mouse between Kirk's Enterprise and a cloaked Romulan Bird of Prey. And it may have been one of the sort of the first episodes of science fiction TV that involved one ship hunting another ship and the other way around for the duration of basically an entire episode. And this was portrayed as a serious threat to the Enterprise. If it had got a full power shot in on the Enterprise probably wouldn't have stood a chance. And the Enterprise only survives by virtue of running away, which was a manoeuvre that Kirk would repeat in Star Trek VI, of course, but that didn't serve him quite so well on that occasion. But let's have a look at this now, and I might do what I often do and turn the lights down. And I have to say, I also love this stand. Classic Romulan logo on the stand, and I was really pleased when I got it through, because the stand was in such nice condition, and it does just sort of really display it well. And again, this is a Playmates model, so this is intended to be played with. And I will demonstrate that now by running you through the lights and sounds. I mean, there aren't many. One thing I haven't done yet is date it. So I'm just going to take you through the sounds and switch off some of these lights and just show you how it lights up and so on, because I think it's worth doing that to see what sort of play value they were going for from it, much like I did with the original series Enterprise. So that's it completely in the dark. I'll just see if my camera can actually detect it at all. There you go. It's quite ironically, that was almost like a sort of a decloaking effect in and of itself from the point of view of me watching it on my phone. Let's try these effects. So there are, not that dissimilar to what the original series Enterprise from Playmates can do actually in many respects. But the buttons are quite subtle. There's just 4 buttons on the top deck here. So they didn't they can't really hide them, but they are quite subtle buttons. So, you know, I've got no real issue with that because I think they're not wrecking the overall look and feel of the thing at all. It's just that they need to be able to do the different sound effects. So they need to have different buttons to do it because that's just how Playmates did that. Now, to my mind, it looks like there could have been lights here, but there were sort of twin disruptors that used to fire out the front, I believe. So this is also where the plasma torpedo would have launched from as well. It's a relatively small ship. They're not huge. They're more sort of scout kind of vessels, I guess, in some respects. But nevertheless, this one in particular packed a punch. Because I haven't shown you the most distinctive aspect of this ship yet. Because looking at it from this angle, it looks pretty sort of plain. But if you're at all familiar with this ship, this will not come as a surprise to you. What is interesting is, in part at least here, is how the stand fits into it. Because there isn't actually a separate unit, it just kind of pops out. I think it's magnetic. So you just have to be brave and sort of stick this right into the underbelly of the Warbird. And then as you can see, you end up with this rather nice sort of Romulan, I don't know what the motif actually is, but I guess it is a sort of a bird motif. So this is the motif of the Romulan Star Empire. So that's pretty cool, but this is what you get on the underside. And that is rather cool. So you get this big bird, sort of fiery phoenix bird image. Now, as is not uncommon with Playmates models, you can see all of the screws that are holding it together on the underside, which is a bit of a shame. But again, this is primarily a toy. It takes 3 AAAs, and this is the area that the stand fits into. So again, it's clever because as a child, you can just yank the stand off and off you go flying your bird of prey. So, you know, I get that. That's definitely a choice on their part. So I fully understand why they went for that as an option. But I mean, you know, I was just amazed to pick this up because I don't think I've ever seen one in the wild in this country. You know, a lot of these Playmates and Diamond Select toys I've had to try and get from America for the most part anyway. And ironically, they sell them really cheaply because I think for them they're not a big deal because they've always had them, so there are loads of them. But over here, they just don't seem to come up that often. So I was always pleased when I could get one for, you know, relatively decent postage. And of course, this coming without a box, unfortunately, meant that the postage was only for the item itself, which meant it wasn't scary. But nevertheless, you know, this is very much a ship of two halves in the sense that you look at it like that, and it doesn't look all that much, but then you flip it, and all of a sudden you've got this really sort of brightly coloured thing, and it's a fascinating juxtaposition. But I think that all of the versions of this from this era have always had this this sort of emblem on it. I think the Lower Decks one did as well, actually. So the Lower Decks one was very, very close to this, whereas some of the reimaginings of it have had sort of different coloured Buzzard collectors and, you know, more the green tinge that we're used to seeing on Romulan ships, which is understandable. You know, I get that. But as I say, it wasn't what I would have particularly tried to get. But as I say, I just came across it and I thought, well, at that sort of price, it would be rude not to show it because it's just another sort of one I can show you from the Playmates range. And I actually think it's a great little ship to fly around, you know, and it's got a few effects. So they tried, you know. Sadly, no cloaking effect, I know. But, you know, obviously you'll see my attempt to do a cloaking effect coming into this video. So that was about as close as I get to it. But it's a nice little ship, and it's very, very close to the original series design for it. You know, I can't argue with that at all. In fact, what I'm going to do is grab the Eagle Moss model just to show you. So here we have the Eagle Moss, very standard size Bird of Prey. Interestingly, they've gone for blue Buzzard collectors, which is odd because they were actually orange in the original series. So I'm not quite sure why they went for that. but you can see that they've added a little bit more coloration on the wings. There's the outline of the coloration there, so I don't know if you were supposed to apply a sticker to that, perhaps from the Playmates version, to get that sort of overall effect. But you can see, the sort of the general coloration and so on, the general sort of approach is the same. And I think if I dare to tilt this upwards, you'll see that Eagle Moss did a similar sort of design on the underside as well, because it would have been rude not to, quite frankly. But I rather enjoy the Playmates version of it. I think the Playmates version of it is very, very striking. If you know your Star Trek at all, there is no doubting what this is supposed to be. It's very clearly an original series Romulan Bird of Prey. It's great. And it was also the first time we had the revelation of Romulans looking like Vulcans as well, which took Spock by surprise. So it's a great episode if you've never actually seen it, because it's quite an important piece of Trek history in that sense. In the idea that we get this sort of joint heritage between the Vulcans and Romulans, that's the episode that established it. 60 years ago, nearly? It's crazy, but that's just the way of it. So I'm now at the point where I think I've actually exhausted my original series ship toys, and I've mentioned before that the one oddity in all of this is that I don't have, apart from the Dinky, there is the Dinky, but apart from the Dinky Klingon D7, no one else seems to have done a D7. And I find this extraordinary, that the D7 and the Katinga don't get a look in terms of toys. It's really, really odd. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned yet, and I laugh when I say this, Riley, because Diamond Select did do a Romulan original series Bird of Prey. I do not have it, because of all of their releases, it seems to be very, very rare. I have seen it a couple of times, but I wasn't in a position to grab it. Obviously, if I ever do come into possession of one, I can do another video and I can compare the two side by side. But it was also interesting in that it was one of those ships where Diamond Select went for the how else can we milk this option, by which I mean this ship cloaks. So what did Diamond Select do? They went for the mid-cloaking option, which Eagle Moss have been known to do as well. In fairness, it's not just Diamond Select that do it, but Eagle Moss have also been known to do sort of cloaked versions of the vessels that they've already done, which are basically just perspex versions of those vessels. But at least the Diamond Select, I think in fairness to it, it was more sort of half cloaked. And I have seen that on eBay, but as I say, it wasn't at the sort of price range, because it was boxed and in America, that I was able to sort of really sort of go for it. So if I ever saw one in the wild, I might try and grab it, but it isn't one of my out and out favourite ships, so I probably wouldn't have picked it, at a high price, because it's not what I particularly need or feel that I want to get. So I'm quite happy just to have shown you this Playmates version of it, because the Diamond Select one will not be vastly different to this. It'll just probably lack the blatant screws on the bottom. They'll probably be a little bit more subtle about how they join it together. But nonetheless, for the sake of completeness, yes, Diamond Select did do one of these, but no, I don't have it to show you at the minute. However, as I say, I will keep half an eye open for one perhaps, but we now, of course, are going to move not to the next generation, but to what came before the next generation. And that means a shed load. Well, I say a shed load. It's a broad range of ships from the films, from the original films. So Star Trek's 1 through 6 initially is where we're going to land here, because that is Kirk's original crew continuing their voyages. And the strange thing is that sounds like it's going to be a lot of ships, but as I've already mentioned, the Klingon Katinga doesn't get a look in. So that leaves us with Refit Enterprises and Birds of Prey. And that's kind of it, actually, strangely. Because another odd quirk is that I've never seen a toy Reliant, which is, to my mind, is completely insane. I don't know why that didn't happen, because many manufacturers looked at the movie era. It's not just a Playmates and Diamond Select era, as it turns out, but we just didn't get any coverage of the Reliant or the Katinga. All we end up with is Birds of Prey, Enterprises, and Excelsiors, of course. And more than one Enterprise, actually, in fairness. But that's it, which is kind of odd. And I don't really sort of quite follow that conceptually. But ironically enough, I'm just thinking, actually, I kind of broke my own timeline here, because the phaser that I showed you when I started this playlist out is actually a movie phaser. It's not an original series phaser. So technically speaking, I kind of jumped ahead a little bit there, but not in terms of the starships. The starships I'm trying to do in proper chronological order. So, as I'm not showing you anything else here right now, I'm going to leave it there, but I'm just trying to sort of tee up what's going to follow. And obviously we will ultimately hit the Next Generation era, where again, things will then expand and get more interesting, because both Playmates and Diamond Select play in that era. So that's it for this one. Please do like and subscribe as ever, and cheers for now.